Hello everyone, I'll be getting going in just a moment here. If anybody is in the chat already, let me know how the sound is, if I'm too loud or too quiet or anything. Let me get a few more things set up, and then we'll get going here. So, don't need all these previews going. Sound is good. Thanks, Wemo in Twitch. Appreciate it. Let me pause this. Okay. Let me have this back here. And let's put the gloves on for now, I think. Okay. We will go ahead and get going. A little bit of an introduction. This video, we're going to be working on CircuitPython, CircuitPython related things. CircuitPython is, if you don't know what that is, it's a version of Python that is aimed at beginners. It's very beginner friendly and it runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. So I have one over here on the camera, which is all wonky ways now. This is a PyPortal microcontroller. There is little chip on the back right there, that's the main brain. This is a Atmel, you can see the name there, Atmel SAMD51 on this microcontroller, and it also has a built-in screen with a touch overlay. It has SD card, it has NeoPixels and some sensors like maybe a gyroscope sensor or something like that, accelerometer maybe. So it's got a bunch of neat stuff all built in, but it's basically just a tiny computer. It's pretty similar to mobile phones, or especially mobile phones a few years back. These days phones are quite a bit more complex. They have nicer, bigger, brighter screens. They have more powerful computers. But you know, maybe 10 years ago or something, maybe I'm a little off on the date, but anyway, the point is this is pretty much just like a little computer, pretty much like phones were and still are, just more advanced versions. So we're going to be working with this. This is a preview of the project we're going to be looking at today. It's a touch deck project. I'm working on it on the PyPortal right now, but it is eventually going to run on the Raspberry Pi 2040 Feather, which I got one of right here. So eventually this is going to have a Featherwing screen plug-in, which is pretty much the same size and shape as the PyPortal one, and it's going to be running on that Feather. Mine is coming in the mail, so I'm working on the PyPortal for that right now. So that's the kind of thing this stream is going to be about. We're going to be diving into the code, so it'll be, you know, development heavy. That's the thing that we're going to be working on mostly. If there's time after that, we will look at some display text PRs. That's the other thing I like to do on these streams. So depending on how far we get on this project, we might do that afterwards, but I'm not 100% sure. So still a couple more things in the introduction. CircuitPython, again, that's the main thing we're going to be working on. The monetary funding for CircuitPython comes primarily from this company, which is on the microcontroller actually right here, Adafruit. Adafruit is a hardware and software company based out of New York. They sell hardware like this device that we're using here, like this Feather RP2040. This is a brand new device from them, and like the Featherwing that this will ultimately run on. So if you like CircuitPython, if you like the kinds of things that I'm working on in this video, and you want to support CircuitPython and the project, the way that you can do that is by purchasing hardware from Adafruit. So if you go to adafruit.com, you can buy devices like this one and the RP2040, although this is probably sold out at this point, I'm guessing. But you can buy devices like that that run CircuitPython. You can also buy sensors and all kinds of breakout boards and different things, lights and NeoPixels that you can use with these devices. So consider going there and purchasing hardware if you want to support the project. This is not a paid video. They're not paying me to make this video. I just do this for fun. But they do pay me to make guides and other software from time to time, like this control touch deck thing that we're helping JP with here. Okay, so that is, I think, it for the intro. How's it going, Jose? Good morning to you as well. If there is time today, after I get done working on this, I'm going to be diving into your text PRs, your display text PRs. If there's not time on the stream, I'll definitely be getting to those this weekend, a couple of them for sure. maybe we can talk about some of them even if I don't do a full review as well during the stream. So that's on my to-do list as well for the weekend. But let's dive in a little bit. Let's talk about this project. This is going to be the main thing we're working on. So if anybody caught JP's show yesterday, then you know that JP is working on this touch deck. So again, it's going to run on this RP2040 Feather. It is going to run with a screen that's very similar to this. Let me pull up the screen here. Featherwing. It's like 3.5-inch Featherwing. Let me search by the size. 3.5-inch TFT Featherwing right here. I think this is the one. So you can see there the screen looks pretty much the same as the PyPortal that I have here. It's basically the same size and screen. Even the holes and stuff, the way it mounts, I think are the same. But on the back, whereas the back of my PyPortal right here has the actual microcontroller, the ESP32S2, sensors, SD cards, all kinds of things are on the back of there. On the back of this one is just the Feather header right there. So the Feather will plug right into those 2 lines of pins right there. And in this case, the Feather will serve as the main brain, and the screen, and the touch screen is on the front there, and it just communicates back and forth to the Feather. So this is what we'll be running on ultimately. And if you caught JP's stream, then you saw some of the process for designing the case for this. So a little 3D printed stand. I'm excited to see where that goes and to get mine printed, because I think this is one of the things I'll be actually adding to my own desk here. I've been looking for a way to control a couple of different things with this. Or I've been looking for a way to control a couple of different things, and I think this will make a perfect way to do it. I was also tossing around an idea with this RP2040 and the little joystick Featherwing. So I might still do something with this and maybe add like an RTC to it, potentially even for a timestamper, real-time timestamper. But I think I'm also going to end up using one of these little touch deck things. So if you're not familiar at all with this concept, if we take a look at one of these here, Stream Deck, this is kind of like the commercial version of this. And there's a bunch of different brands out there at this point. I don't know if Stream Deck is a brand. I think this Elgato, I think that's one of the main brands. But it's a popular thing at this point. So there's quite a few different clones and stuff out there. But it's basically, a little box. It sits at an angle. It's got some number of these buttons on it, and then those buttons actually have little screens, or really the way that it works is it's not, there may be different ones, I don't know. The way that some of them work though is it's not different screens inside of each of these buttons. There's actually just one rectangle screen behind there, but it's got a little grid on it, so it's only drawing those little square buttons in the correct spot where they're actually going to shine through with the clear plastic overlay buttons on there. So we're going to be doing something similar. We're not going to have the actual physical clear buttons, I don't think, but we're going to be making the same kind of layout with a big grid of icons here. We'll have little text labels for them if we want, although it is optional. You can go without them if you want. It's going to be super easy to swap in different images and stuff, so you can use your own bitmaps. And it will, of course, it will be super easy to configure, right? Nobody wants the same set of macros probably as anybody else. So the way that this is all set up is you'll be able to configure it to have whichever icons you want, and then have them do whichever keyboard actions you want. So this is the kind of thing we're trying to make. Let's see, do we need this? I don't think we need this one anymore. Again, this is the hardware that it runs on, 3651 for the Adafruit part number there. Mine is coming in the mail, so I'll be converting this code over to work on it once it arrives, to work on this in the RP2040 Feather. But I think it should be fairly straightforward. I don't think it will be too much trouble to convert that over, hopefully. We'll have to do some stuff to set up the display. Maybe there's helper library for that. But once we do that, as long as we have a display variable and stuff, our code is pretty portable. So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue, hopefully. One thing, sort of housekeeping notes wise, I'm switching up the camera. I got a different camera going on here. It's a little bit further away. So we'll see how this one goes. We'll see if we like this one. Maybe I'll swap back to the other way next week, or if this is good, then I'll keep it. If you have a preference, let me know in the chat. Speaking of the chat, the place we are on in the chat is on Discord. It should be linked down at the bottom there, adafruit.it/Discord. You can go there, you can join us. I'm in the live broadcast room. So if you want to chat, you can join us there, or I'll try to keep an eye on the Twitch chat as well. How's it going, Hugo? Good morning. In K-Match, let me see. That says here, I can't see it quite on my little preview. Took a brief specs at the Feather TFT. Touch display has a lot of pixels. Yeah, 480 by 320. Maybe that's actually bigger than the PyPortal. Maybe that's the size of the Titano. I think the PyPortal is 320 by 240. So maybe this, maybe we'll actually have a little bit more room once we get on the Feather. Looks like the data connection is SPI, so refresh is slow. Won't match that of the PyPortal. That's true. Yeah, more pixels and relatively slow speed there. May need to keep performance. Yep. So I think what I'm gonna do is try out the animations. That's good. That's good to know. I had not caught that the screen size is a little bit different there. I think you're right. Let me look up the PyPortal and just verify that. PyPortal. This will get us there, probably, right? Yeah. We don't want the learn system. Maybe we want the shop page. Cam looks good. Feels a bit better further. Smaller region. Yeah, it did get resized a little bit. I think it's more narrow now. The other thing is I'm used to kind of looking over this way to try to look at the camera, and now it's in front of me. I got to get used to looking in front of me when I want to look at the camera. Yeah, PyPortal, it is... What is this? This is the... Okay, this is the Titano, which is the big one. PyPortal. I think this might be missing a Titano right here. PyPortal Titano has a bigger 3.5-inch screen, which is 320 by 480 with a resistive touch, compared to the original PyPortal's 3.2-inch 240 by 320. Twice as many pixels. Thank you for mentioning that, K-Match. Yeah, I was off on the screen there. I was thinking these were the same, but it is actually different, and we're going to have quite a bit more room, actually, which is nice, because one of the things that I was running up against is we were starting to look a little bit cramped, and I'm going to be adding, once we dive into the code here, you're going to see one of the things I'm doing today is adding another button to act as the layer swap button to go between different layers. So yeah, that's actually really nice to have a bunch of extra space. That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think mine's coming today or tomorrow, or maybe Monday. Maybe do I have? I don't think I have a big PyPortal. I'm not sure that I have a screen that size. Maybe I'll play with. Maybe I'll play with the Pygame display a little bit. We can mimic it at that size and see what we can do with the interface. Anyway, getting a little ahead of myself. Let me just take a quick glance through the chat here. Hey, I just a round of highs to folks. Jose, I think I said good morning earlier, maybe. Dexter Starboard, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. K-Match, how are you today? Thanks for tuning in. Hugo, how's it going? Good morning. Cam feels good, a bit further back. Yeah, smaller. Oh, I think maybe I did read this one before. Doing good, Jose David. Not bad, need coffee. Yeah, coffee sounds pretty good. Maybe I'll take a break here in a little while. I'll make coffee for myself. Actually, that does sound good. We'll go with the water for now, though. Okay. Let me get back to these previews and try to watch the Twitch chat here. There we go. So we can close that. That did confirm the size of the PyPortal. We are smaller, so we do have a little bit of extra room to work with. The code for this is on GitHub if anybody's interested. It's right here, TouchDeck working files, although I am going to be changing it around, so it's in active development. So you can grab a copy of it or fork it or play with it if you want. But one thing is, it's still going to be changing throughout the stream and throughout the next couple of days while I get it finalized. It's 2020. Don't make a clock that you have to set manually. Yeah, I would agree with that. The daylight savings time change is coming up real soon here, I think, for those of us in some parts of the U.S. Back. Okay. Here, actually, let me 1 second. Sorry, let me reply to this person. This is okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, the code is on GitHub. Here is the current state of it. So it's actually coming pretty good. We've got the icons working. We've got the little labels working. It's even doing the shortcuts. Like, let me go and close this and grab a new one of these and close this and bring this over. So I can go half and half here. So a bunch of the ones at the top, like play, pause, fast forward, rewind, those do YouTube shortcuts. Like, I forgot the thing. K is what it happens to be, and it's actually the same for play and pause. So those both do K. Fast forward does a right arrow, I believe it is. Rewind does a left arrow, so we can do that one. We can do rewind. You can see that the cursor did move back there. We could hit it again. We'll go back again. We can go fast forward now, so that's right arrow. Next, I think that one's like Control N. Yep, there's a Control N. Volume up and down, those work as well. So if we hit those, or if I press those volume buttons, you can see, I think you can see at least, the screen little overlay volume thing is working there. And then the other ones, I didn't have anything specific for yet, so those are just testers. So they just write out the word test. So this one is a T here, maybe, if everything's working. Yeah, T, E, S, T. And then the last one does a little smiley face here if you did it. So one thing is, with the screen being kind of small, as I was mentioning a little bit, I think I started to talk about this, we're getting a little cramped on the space, so it's a little easy to accidentally hit different buttons when you're not meaning to, especially if you're trying to hold the PyPortal down at the same time, which is one reason I'm excited to get the base printed up. But you can see we've got quite a bit of this done. The main thing I'm going to be working on today is layers. Right now, the support for different layers is kind of built in about halfway. There is code for layers. The configuration is coming from a list, so it's got the stuff it needs for multiple layers. There's a current layer variable, but what there is not right now is a way to actually change the layer and have it render the next one. So that's what I'm going to be working on during the stream. And after that, it's that's basically the core functionality of what we're going for. The thing that I will do after that, which K-Match alluded to, is once we get all of that working, the next thing to kind of push it over the edge is add a little bit of embellishment where when you click on one of the icons, it will do a little animation. It will kind of like grow and then shrink back to normal size. So that's a pretty similar thing that you see on phones a lot. Like in mobile interfaces, when you click on an icon, it kind of like, it bounces or whatever. It gets a little big and then goes back. If we can get that going on the screen, especially considering that it's the bigger screen, if we can get that going and looking good, then we will add that into it as well. But it might be the kind of thing maybe we follow up with, depending on how the animation works. I know K-Match is working on moving a lot of that stuff into the core. I don't know if that particular animation is something that's in the core yet or not, but if not, then like possibly it'll speed up with C code from the core as opposed to Python code. So maybe that's an option if it is a little bit too slow. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Yes, like an emboss, deboss, or vice versa. Hugo says, yeah. Okay, so let's see where we're at. One thing I want to do real quick actually is let's just take a look at where the code's at right now, and then I'll go ahead and dive in and start working with it. So the project consists of two main Python files right now, the touchstack code, which is your code.py that you put on your device, and then touchstack layers, which has the config object inside of it. So this is where you actually declare all of your different layers. So if you notice here, the name here, YouTube controls, this matches up with YouTube controls at the top of the screen there. Let me move this to the other side. And then each one of these labels below has a label, like this one says play, so it has the word play there. This one says pause, so it has the word pause there. So it's actually already taking all of this information from the config. It's got the text for the label, it's got the icon image that it's going to use right there, and then it's got the actions that it's going to send when you click on that icon with the touchscreen. So all of this stuff is inside of touchstack layers. And it does have one extra couple variables here, media and key. These are just constant variables that are used to indicate whether you are sending a consumer control, like the volume codes, versus a standard HID key code, like those ones there, the letters and everything. So this is our config. One thing I want to do is, I'm almost positive a bunch of these imports don't need to be here. I think we only need one or two of these. So we'll clean that up at some point, not right this second. Let me take a peek through the CodePy first and show you what's going on inside of here. So we got all of our imports. There's a cooldown mechanism in it to try to stop it from registering multiple clicks, like if you hold your finger down, or if the touch screen kind of like recognizes your finger but then loses it for a second but then gets it back. That's one thing, is the touchscreen is a resistive touchscreen, so it's not, you have to actually put pressure on it, and if you let up a little bit, then it won't see your finger anymore. So there's a fair amount of repeat phantom clicks a little bit. So this cooldown time tries to alleviate that. Last press time is a variable. We're going to store the time, the monotonic time of the last time that we got pressed, and that's used in conjunction with the cooldown timer there. The current layer, so this is currently just hard-coded to 0. This is going to be the part we're working on. We're going to change that up to a bigger number and have it re-render all the icons to be a different set. So inside of layers here, this is a list as represented by the square bracket. We have this whole config object. We're going to eventually create a second config object in here, and then CodePy will be able to use it by changing the current layer variable right there. So currently we're just using the onboard display since we're on a PyPortal. This will get changed to contain the setup code for the Featherwing display once we get that. We have a main group that's pretty standard. We set up the keyboard. This is Adafruit HID library. We set up the keyboard object. We set up the consumer control object. That way we can send our commands when we're ready, our key codes. We have this icon widget. This is actually the meat of this code, at least from a visual standpoint, is this icon widget combined with the grid layout from the new Display.io layouts library. So you maybe if you've watched in previous weeks, you've seen me work on that Display.io layout library a little bit. And the two things that are really used to create this interface right here are the grid layout, which made this super easy, and then this icon widget, which I created, which represents one of the images, an image icon with a little label below it. And I think one thing that I want to do is, this can be reused by other stuff. There's no need for this to be necessarily inside of this touch deck project. I think what I'll do is move this into display.io layout. Like we'll make a PR to include this in the display.io layout library. That way other folks can reuse it in different projects. Because it's a pretty generic thing, right? Like it's just the idea of an image, you know, above with a little centered label down below it. So that's a fairly wide open generic concept. So I think that can get reused elsewhere. So we'll move that in to layout to give you an idea of what's inside of it. You know, it's pretty straightforward. We have these two superclasses from that layout library, widget and control. So Kmatch worked on these things a lot, and they make it really easy to create a custom widget like this. So I just extend both of those, which is super amazing. You can extend multiple things in Python. My brain still works more in Java than Python, so this is still kind of a weird thing to me, but it's super cool in this case for sure. We have Initializer. In the Initializer, we take the text that we want to put on the icon. We also take the icon file path. So that's a string that points to the image we want to use. We're calling up to super there. That's going to call, I guess it's going to call widget. I'm not 100% sure which one it's going to call, I suppose, because we didn't specify. It does work how it is, though, so it is doing what we need. Maybe it would be better to be specific, though, and tell it which one it's calling. But I think it's calling widget, or maybe it's calling them both. Passing along all those kwargs. Loading up the image icon, so using image load library to load the image that we were passed there in the constructor, making a tile grid for that. Appending it to ourselves because widget extends group, so we are a group. We're able to append stuff to ourselves. So we append that tile grid there. Then we're going to create a label right here. We give it the text that was passed to us in the constructor. We use anchor point and anchor position to move it to the bottom below that icon and have it centered right there. Centering it by using 0.5 there on the x coordinate and the anchor point. And of course then doing image.width over 2 right there on the position. We append the label to, again, that's our own group instance, the one that we're extending from widget. And then we set up a touch boundary. So the touch boundary is our x and y, the image's width, and then the image's height plus the label bounding box's height, I believe. One thing that would be really cool in display text, I think, is if we made height and width properties. We have bounding box, and you can get height and width from bounding box. But I think it'd make the code clearer if we had an extra property for height and width. Maybe I'll make an issue for that one day. That'd be a good first issue for somebody. Still wrapping my head around Python deals with inheritance. Yeah, I agree. Particularly multiple inheritance and how to call methods by the same name in the base class. Yeah, I'm with you. When I was writing this code, it was definitely a lot of guess and checking. Also with the refactor of display text recently, is it multiple inheritance? In that case, it's inheriting one thing, which is inheriting another thing. In this case, it's got that. It's 2 layers, but it's also got too wide. It's inheriting 2 things instead of, well, 2 things, and then one of those things has another. Yeah. Anyway, it's crazy with Python. I agree with Hugo. I don't quite grok it all the way, but I can kind of fumble my way through it a little bit at this point. Kmatch says, for some reason I was getting an error when we try to specify. Oh, I see. Okay, so looks like Kmatch tried this a little bit with when you're calling super by specifying the particular superclass you want. I feel like this seemed to call widget maybe the first superclass if nothing is specified. Maybe I can figure out a clear way. Yeah, I do not know the answer for sure, but it would be interesting to find out. Maybe we'll play around specifically with that one of these days and see what we can discover. Come from C#. Yep, C# is a lot like Java, so Hugo and I are going to be kind of on a similar wavelength with kind of the instincts we have about objects. Could initiate both parents in case you have different parameters in the init. Yeah, I could call, if I needed to, I think I could call super on both somehow. I don't know the correct syntax like Kmatch is alluding to there. Kmatch tried it with putting widget and self inside there. And was getting errors, and I don't know the proper syntax either, but I do know it should be possible. But in this case, I don't think we need it. I think everything is working at least as I kind of assumed it would, or as I expected it to, without. So for now, I think we're good. One thing I will talk about while I'm here is we're setting the touch boundary, and we are setting it to the image width. One thing that we might want to consider is the fact that the label could be longer than the image. Like right here on fast forward, the label is actually wider than the image. It might be good to make the width be the size of the label instead of the size of the icon, but then if somebody puts a super long label in, then it could overlap. I'm not sure how the grid layout treats it. I don't know. That's something to consider, is whether we want to include the label width in the touch so that you would be able to touch like outside the icon here but inside the label and have it still register. I don't know. Maybe we'll do that, but this is how it's setting the touch boundary. And then we override contains. Thank you to Kmatch for pointing me down the right road to do this. I had a different implementation of this first, which required changing some stuff in the library. But this is actually much better. So here we're overriding contains, which is a method of control. Can't control click into that because it's not pip installed. We could pip install it if we wanted to get the code to be happy up there and to let us control click into it. But that's all right. For right now, I won't bother with it. But it is a method of control, and it's a lot like a button. If you've used display button, the display IO, I think it's called display. I think it's maybe just called display button, but it's a touchscreen button. Most of the examples are for, again, Pi Portal and other similar resistive touchscreen devices. This is the same interface that display button uses. It has a contains method. You pass it a touch point here, which you get from the touchscreen library, and then it will kind of return, true or false back to you if the touch point is inside of, its own touch boundary, which is declared up here. So we're overriding that, and the thing that we're overriding it to do is basically to shift the touch box by the X and Y coordinates, because when our grid layout adds all these icon widgets to it, it changes the X and Y coordinates and also the width and height as well. It changes all those properties in order to fit them inside the grid layout. And so we need to update the touch boundary with the new X and Y after the grid layout changes it. So that's what the contains is doing here. It's going to basically modify the touch X and the touch Y right here to account for the X and Y location of the icon widget. And then once it does that offset calculation, then it will just go ahead and pass it to the super class contains, which will return true or false for us. Hugo says, give each button its own space with 1 or 2 margin between, so the button has its size and the image is centered horizontally and vertically in the button space. Yeah. So I think what Hugo is saying is more like how I was mentioning with this. So there would be, you know what I can do? Let me, I can kind of like annotate this with this thing maybe. It's not perfectly square, but you'll get the idea. Let's make this, we can grab that. And then once we're here, I can draw on it. So yeah, if we basically, it's not 100% perfect and I can't really resize it, but you get the idea here kind of. If I hope that's coming through. Is that coming through on the preview? I'm not 100% sure, and it takes over the rest of my screen. Anyway, the idea is like you would be able to touch pretty much anywhere inside this green box. So you could touch outside the icon, but still within the bounds of the label down here and have it work. And there would just be like 1 or 2 pixels, like Hugo mentioned, 1 or 2 pixels in between that don't go. Yes, thank you, Dexter, for confirming, and also thank you, Kmatch, for posting that that diagram. That explains actually what I'm talking about much better than I ever could, for sure, and visually. Let me check the chat here. I think, did I miss one? Let's see. Switched around, added the optional touch padding as the input variable. It takes that input and it tweaks the touch boundary to add space around the widget touch padding. So maybe what we would do is add touch. Whoa. Zoom that back out. Okay. Maybe what we would do is add that same concept, touch padding, to this icon widget. That's probably the way to go. Although the other thing is I don't know how it interacts with the grid. But it's going to be more of a moot point now that I know that we have more pixels. Man, that having a bigger screen is really nice. Actually, I was sweating the way this was starting to get cramped. I was thinking maybe 48 was too big on the icons and that we would need to shrink them back down. But having a bigger screen, I think 48 is going to be no problem. We might be able to go bigger even and still have room for this. Kmatch text label. The text label is the one outlier. Okay. One thing is I think the widget width, well, touch boundary. I mean, the other thing is it's extending widget also, which has a width. And I think the widget width might encompass them both. So maybe I should be using self.width instead of image.width. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, we'll play with that in a little while. But that's our contains method. So again, yeah, this widget, I think we're going to try to move this into the layout library. We'll make a PR for it maybe today during the stream. And then if anybody has a chance, it'd be super cool if you can test it out for us. Because one thing is, I think JP is trying to show this next week on show and tell possibly. So we definitely want to have it done, or at least, you know, working enough to show by that point. So we'll have to get this merged in pretty quick if we do go that route of moving it to the library. But I think that's no problem. So touchscreen here, we're setting up the touchscreen. This is just the default configuration for the PyPortal. Creating the grid layout right here. So this is what's doing all of the layout magic for us. We give it a location where we want it to be on the screen, and that's the top left corner of it. So this top left corner of the very top left thing up here, that's our XY coordinates of the grid layout. You can see I moved it in by 10 and down by 20. So down by 20 so that we have room for the label at the top, and in by 10 just to give it some padding on either side there. We have width and height right here. I did my total screen size, so 320 minus my 10 pixels, and I did 10 pixels on each side, so minus 20 total. So that's how I came to 300 width. And then 210 height, I did pretty much the same thing. I started with 240, which is what the size of my PyPortal is, subtracted the 20 from the top, and then subtracted a 10 from the bottom to get to 210. So we will adjust this stuff once we move over to the feather wing. Here's our grid size. We want 4 columns and 3 rows. So that's our grid size right there. And I do have 8 pixels of padding inside of each of those cells. And then max size, this is actually the max size for the group, which is going away soon as a requirement. So we don't want to remove it from our code yet, just because like there's not a released version of CircuitPython where that's gone. But Deshipu did some work on that, and now we have group behaving more like list. which means we can append more stuff to it, which means we do not have to have a max size. So eventually we'll come back and take that out. A couple lists here. We got an icons list. We got a pressed icons list. This for loop I was using for testing. This is a for loop that will just draw 12 test icons. So before I had it parsing from the config object, I created this for loop right here and just had it create 12 fake items for me. Once this is done, it might be possible to make this project adjustable to different size displays. Yeah, that would be really cool. I think that's definitely doable. The grid layout's going to make it super easy to do that, because you could pass in for width and height right here. You could do like display dot width minus whatever and display dot height minus whatever, and it would match up to the screen that you're on. So yeah, that'd be really cool. Like with Stream Deck and the different sizes. Yeah, I think it's going to be cool to, I think it'd be nice if we could configure the grid size also. Right now, the grid size is hard-coded at 4x3. But like Hugo mentioned, they have a bunch of different sizes of these things, and they all have different numbers of buttons on them. So I do think it would be cool, maybe like, you got the mega pad with a bunch of them, but there's also a small one somewhere with only, yeah, like this one only has 6. I think it would be cool to make that part configurable as well. So you get to choose how many buttons you want, and then that would especially come in handy if you're working on smaller screens, like a PyPortal regular like I'm doing, or even, going down to a PyPortal Pint, for instance. Maybe you'd want to do a smaller grid there. Okay, so those are groups. That's our for loop. It's currently commented out because we are now loading from the config object. Layer label, this is the label that's at the top here that says YouTube controls on this one. So this is creating that label. It's using a bitmap label. It's using the built-in terminal font. Anchor point, again, we want to get it centered, so we're going 0.5 on the X. Position, this one is, halfway through the screen. Display width over 2 there to get it halfway. And then we just add that label to the main loop. Then we got this function here, load layer. This function is for taking one layer's config object, so one of these things right here, and loading all the icons for it and drawing them onto the screen, and also setting the layer label to match whatever is in the config up here. So that's what this function does. It basically just loops over all those things, creates a new icon for each one, adds it to the group. One thing we'll need to do is remove these things from the group, because right now we're just appending. Once we go to render a second layer, we'll have to remove the old ones. So we'll get into that as we get going. I'm just going to walk through the rest of the code here so you guys know where I'm starting from. We call load layer right there. We append the layout to our main group right there. And then we've got our sort of main infinite loop, which is pretty straightforward. We get a touch point from our touchscreen driver. If the touch point is none, that means that nothing is being touched. So in the case that nothing is being touched, we just do nothing. So we only care if there's a touch point, which means that something is actually being touched. Well, which means that the screen is being touched. Not necessarily that an icon is being touched, but the screen is being touched. So we will take a timestamp. Once we know, again, that the screen is being touched, we'll use that timestamp to compare back to our last press time to enforce our cooldown timer there. So that's the logic that's doing that. Then we are going to loop over all the icons. So a for loop here is just looping over all those icons. The icons get added to this list inside the load layer function right here. So we're looping over them. We're just calling contains on each one. So if the touch point is within the bounds of the icon, then we go inside this if statement here. If the index is not already in the pressed icon, so this is how we have it just do a single action instead of like a repeating thing. Maybe eventually people would want the repeating code. I'm not sure. If so, we would change the logic here to account for it. But for right now, it's single action only. So We check to make sure it's not currently pressed. I got some debugging prints here. We'll turn those off eventually. Then it says if it is a key, basically a media not media, but an HID key. Basically, we're checking this variable right here to see if it's either key or media. Those are the two options. So if it is key, we do this part right here. We call kbd.press. We pass it all of the keys we want to press using this little asterisk cheat ninja code here. That's going to destructure, I think that's the right word, but maybe not. It's going to pass all those arguments separately. And then after we press the key, then we just release all of the keys. And one thing is, this code is wrong, actually. This needs to be empty inside here. I think maybe did I change this in Mu? Yeah. Okay, so I had fixed this in Mu, but looks like I didn't fix it in the local project. So one thing we'll get a peek at today, you know, you've seen it before, my workflow with PyCharm. One thing you'll get a peek at today is kind of how I do, you know, between PyCharm and Mu and Git, which it's a bit of a dance, truthfully. Some folks try to bring everything into PyCharm. That might be the way I go eventually, but I tend to bounce back and forth. The downside of bouncing back and forth, though, is that sometimes I end up with my code in different states, like I did here. I accidentally had some parameters in here before, but took them out now. So the other branch here, else if this was media instead of key, then we want to send the consumer control codes, like volume up, volume down, instead of the regular keyboard HID. Let me catch up on the chat here. So, I remember the last one that I looked at. One thing might be, oh yeah, adjustable displays. That would definitely be awesome. Spring Deck with different screen sizes, agree. Or the button controls in their own display group with other elements in other parts of the screen. Yeah, you could add other stuff to the screen fairly easily. That's one of the nice things about display IO layout. It gives you like a group object or whatever. You just add it to your main group, and you can also stick all kinds of other stuff in there if you want. Combined with a CyberDeck on a Pi 400, this opens up a ton of possibilities for use. Yeah, I don't have a Pi 400 yet. It looks like a super cool thing. I saw that that little CyberDeck screen they showed off the other day. That thing made me want to get a Pi 400 quite a bit. Maybe I'll get one of those one of these days. Anyway, where were we at here? So else if it was media, then we send the consumer control code. And again, you know, these big long accessors here, this is basically just reading the config out of here. So it's just accessing this tuple here to send it to either the HID keyboard or the consumer control keyboard there. We set the last press time. That way our cooldown knows that right now we got touched, so that it will, you know, wait for whatever the cooldown time is. We add it to the pressed icons. That way, in the next iteration, we know that it was already pressed, so we know not to do the action again. Else right here, if the icon shortcut does not contain the touch point, so if this icon in the iteration is not being touched, and if the index was in the pressed icons, basically like we were touching it last frame, but we're not touching it anymore this frame, then we want to remove the index from the pressed icons. That way, next time around, this if statement right here will get reset, and it will be able to go back to true again next time because we removed the index here. Okay. So that is it for the code. That's what we have so far. And again, the thing I'm going to be working on right now is adding the second layer. So let me create a second layer in my config. You know what? I'm just going to do it in Mu first, and then I will bring it back into PyCharm once I'm ready to commit. Let me go like this here, get some side-by-side action, and let's work on this. So I have both of these loaded up. So yes, we're going to make a new config first, which is right here. And I'll just put like one thing in it for right now. Maybe two, actually. We'll load it up with some more stuff afterwards. Actually, you know what I'll do is I will grab all these test ones. That's what I'll do, because they're not specific to YouTube. So let me paste those in here. Okay, shortcuts. Close off the shortcuts list. Whoops. This is one spot, actually. Maybe I should have done this in PyCharm. PyCharm's nicer about automatically creating a bunch of these closing things. Gotten a little spoiled by it. Close off the layer object. That's good. This is closing off our list of layers. And then this is closing off our outer config object. Okay, so we got a second layer. Let's just call this test second layer. Slayer. Test second Slayer. Test second layer. We'll just keep the same icons and the same labels and everything. That's all fine. One thing I will work on while I'm here is maybe I can delete a few of these. Like, we don't need USB HID, I'm pretty sure. I don't think we need keyboard. If we wanted to do like keyboard.write, maybe we would need keyboard, although that would be in CodePy anyway. I don't think we need that one. Consumer control code. I think we only need consumer control code inside this one. Let's cut that out. Let me preview here. Okay, let's just run it like this and see if I have syntax error or anything weird. Can't save because we got a disk problem. I think maybe this changed because I had two devices plugged in. So I think it changed from CircuitPy 1 to CircuitPy. But we can save it now. Okay, that worked. And it did not crash, so we don't have a syntax error in our JSON, and we're not missing any kind of imports, so this is good. Eventually I'll add a header to this file, but it's fine for now. So we need another button. I think what I'm gonna do is put the new button in the bottom right. That's gonna be where we're gonna put it to start with. And in order to do that, I'm gonna scooch the table, the grid layout, out of the way just a little bit to the left, to my left. I don't know which way is which on the camera, but we're gonna scoot it to the left of the screen so that on the bottom right we have room for the new button. So scoot it left. We'll change the X of the grid layout. So we don't want it. Well, we have the cell padding, actually. What if we just do 0? How does that look? Oh, yeah. So we need to do this too. Control-Shift-S, code, enter, yes. Okay. That's not so bad. Yeah. Again, once we go to the bigger screen, a lot of this is also going to get taken care of, but this is good for now. I can put my little swap button down here in the corner, and I think this will work okay for now. Absolute worst case scenario, one thing you could do is maybe, you could make one of your icons be the layer button if you wanted. But we're going to try to do a separate one here. That way there's 12 spots for you to have macros, especially because we have more size on the real screen. So let's go back to small. Anchor this thing back here. What do I want to use for a button? I think I'll just use display button for now, honestly. One thing is I don't know the code for that off the top of my head, so let's go grab that. GitHub. So examples, simple. Right. The simple test. It's actually kind of complex because it has a bunch of these things. We don't really need variables for all of these. So I think I'm just going to put all of this in the constructor here. So xy xy width height. So I'm going to try to make it small enough to just fit on the edge over there. And I don't know exactly how much size that is. One other thing I'm going to do actually while I'm here is tick down the cell padding by just a little bit here. Right. So we're halfway through a change. Let me break this out and have it big. Let's import button. So this says button X is not defined, which makes sense because I never finished putting these things in. So X, we want this to the right of the layout, the grid layout, which in my case is the variable layout. Yes. So layout dot X plus layout dot width. Should get us there. Y, we want it close to the bottom edge of the screen. Display.height minus the button size. What's up, buddy? Got the little stripy cat here. Wants some lovin's. Display height minus, I don't know. I'm just going to guess for right now. Let's call it 40. Width, we're just guessing right now. Let's call it 30. Let's call it 40. Button style, let's do square. That way it goes all the way but up next to the edge of the screen. Which is like button style rect, maybe. I don't know off the top of my head though. Rect, yeah. Button.rect. I think is it like this? Yeah. Fill color. I don't know. Maybe some kind of tealish. Outline, we don't need any outline. I think we can just leave that off. Label. It's going to say swap or maybe layers or something. We'll see how the text fits. Terminalio font, that's what we want. Label color, black or white. Let's try white. Okay. Grid layout has no width. Because it extends widget, and widget extends group, and group has no width. But we passed it a width in the initializer. I wonder, it just doesn't have a property. It would be nice to have a dedicated back button to go up a layer. With a Stream Deck, you can't get around that. To go back button. So you like so basically have up and down. So you could cycle forwards or backwards through the layers. Is that what you mean, Hugo? What am I doing? Let me go to Adafruit though. My main is very old. Display layout, widgets, grid layout. No, layouts. Grid layout. Oh no, it just extends group directly. We do pass it a width, and it has a self._width, but it just has no property. I think we could eventually add, well, Kmatch, keep me honest. If there's a reason why this would break something, let me know. Or anybody else, if anybody else is around. Kmatch did a lot of the work on this though. I think though we could have public properties for height and width. Would that be a problem? For now, it's not great, but we can just do this to make the private one. Let me get the camera. Okay, so that worked. Well, it didn't crash. It didn't draw on the screen, but that makes sense because we didn't actually append the button to the main group or anything. So we created a button but didn't show it. Main group append button. There we go. So one thing is the text is too small. The color is not great. It's too bright with white text, so we would want dark text. I don't know. I think possibly JP might be designing a screen for us. My design skills definitely leave a lot to be desired in terms of making stuff look good. So it might be that we end up using like a BMP or something here instead of a button object. But for now we'll just go functional. From the first main screen, have a button that opens a second layout, one level down, like a directory structure. On a Stream Deck, to go up a level, you need a back button, and that back button must be part of your layout. With a dedicated built-in back button, you can get to all the slots without worry. So I think maybe, Hugo, what you're saying is to have it more like a tree structure. Like your first screen would be the screen where you choose which layout you want, and all the grids, all the things in the grid would be the different layers that you have available. You click one that takes you into that layer, and then you have a back button back here which takes you back out of that layer, back to sort of the, what I'll call the home screen, I guess, the layer selection screen. That sounds pretty cool. The one thing I worry about would be the name of the names of the layers. Those can be fairly long, a fair bit longer, at least in my mind, than the names of the icons. So if we were trying to draw those icons with the layer names on them, I don't know if we could fit 4x3. We could go to a list or something. I like the idea of also just being able to cycle through them forwards and backwards. The top layer can be a regular layer with real buttons. Okay, so not so much like a tree structure, but more like the first layer is kind of the default or the primary. Like the first layer is easier to get back to than any other layer. So you put the stuff that you do most on the first layer. You still use forward to cycle to the next layers. But let's say you cycle like 3 layers down. In order to get back to the primary one, you don't have to go back by 3, and you don't have to go forward through the rest of the list. Instead, you have one button that brings you back to the primary one. Yes, that's cool. I like that idea. That's a good idea. We'll do that. I think that's great because that'll be easy in our logic. We'll just set current layer back to 0. 0 will be the first one. That's the primary one. I do like it. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah, home layer, that's a good name for it. Thank you, Dexter. And then for the button for that one, we can make a little home. Maybe that could be top right, and we could make a little house icon, or I probably have one somewhere. I have a bunch of icons, but that one can be a home icon. Yeah, I like it. Thank you for the suggestions. Okay, so let's make this button bigger. That's where we were at. Width of the button. We could make it dynamic based on the layout width also. I don't know. That's kind of a little unnecessary. Let's just bump it bigger for now. Maybe, I don't know, what does 50 get us? Is there room still? That might be too big. We'll need to move X. Oh, okay, so one thing is all this empty space. We have a bunch of empty space, but it's because of the cell padding? Just for the sake of understanding this, if I make a smaller cell padding, does my button get closer? Not really. Could just subtract the factor back from this. I feel like that's pretty far away from the thing. There we go. That's a little better. We could go bigger, maybe taller ways. Like, see what that looks like. So one thing that might be cool, since this is looking like it's going to be a vertical shaped button in this layout at least, one thing that might be really cool is I know Jose David is working on vertical text in the label so that it can have text that's written vertically like that, or even rotated 90 degrees potentially. So that might be something cool to do in this thing. You know what we could do right now to fake it? Would this work? Put new lines between all of these? That's really hacky. the line spacing is too much, and also the location seems really weird. I don't know why it's so far over to the right and down instead of closer to the top left corner. Maybe there's a padding, or there's something weird going on with the size. Yeah, I saw the styles thing. That's one of the things I'll talk about when I get to the PRs. Or yeah, we could take it. Actually, let's take a quick break and talk about that. I think those are cool. I think though, I'm not sure if display text rather. I'm not sure if display text is the right spot for them. I think that it might be best to, let me get some of these things closed. I think it might be best to have a separate library that's like a color tools library, maybe. Display text. This is what Jose is talking about. Pull request, the new one. Uh-oh. Exchange addresses is the case when the label is initialized with max glyphs instead of text. Uh-oh. Okay. Looks like we got a fix here for something. I don't know. Jose, is this the same? No, this is not the anchor point issue. Oh, fixes 141. Sorry, getting off track a little bit. I'm wrapping right back around to the style. The label class is initialized. Huh. Okay. We'll need to review this. This one will go on the stack too. I'll try to get to this one either today or tomorrow. But the one that I was headed for is style. And what Jose did in this one, basically added a helper function here that takes a string and gives you back hex. So it takes like, does it have a hashtag maybe? Or you know how you see sometimes like hashtag and then hex color codes? I think it's taking those, yeah, like this. It's taking that string and converting it to a hex number like 0x whatever. So that's the one, that's the helper function here. And then there's a themed label. So you can have the themed label and then you give it a theme, and the theme is one of these things from in here. And then there's a big long list of all of these. I think these are HTML spec or something like that. Those came from somewhere. I think this is neat stuff, but I don't know if it should be in the display text, like I was saying. I think what would be really cool is if we created a new library that's like a color helper or color tools or something like that library. It can have a function like this inside of it. I think that's a perfect place for it. It can have other helper functions like converting from tuples to hex and back and forth like that. And then it can also have all of these presets built in, ready for people to import. And if possible, I would love to do it in some way where you can, where it would be possible to import like just the one theme that they want to use, if that's possible. Because I think right here, if you import this thing, it's going to give you this whole dictionary with all of these things, which is cool if you want to use a bunch of different ones. But if you're just trying to get one of them, it might eat up a fair amount of memory depending on what your project is. So I do think this is cool, but I think a separate library is where it should go. The thing I would recommend to do is maybe make a note on the doc, on the meeting doc for Monday, or whenever you can make it next time. Make a note in the weeds to ask about creating a new library that is a color helper library that contains this kind of stuff. Helper functions that convert, and themes, like theme presets, and then, you know, potentially it can have any of the things that are needed to help you use those presets with other stuff. And then from there, if we end up, like from there, once we have a separate library, what I would recommend is not necessarily making another label if possible, but instead we can just add features to the existing labels. Like we can have a set theme function. We create that function on both of them, and then we implement it, and it accepts an argument that is a theme object, like one of these, and it will set all the things it needs to based on that. And then we can also implement a similar function, set theme. We can put that in other libraries too. So like display button library could do that, you know, switch round. In any widget that we make, we can just keep creating those like set themes, and it will assume the type of this object and set all of its stuff accordingly. So those are my thoughts on that. I mean, we can wait and see. We can get feedback from other folks. You know, it's not as though like just because that's what I think, that's how it goes. That's definitely not the case. It's definitely a community project for sure. And I'm definitely interested to get thoughts and ideas from other folks. But that would be my thought. Is this kind of stuff would be great in a color tools or a color helpers type library. PySimpleGUI. Okay, that's where those themes came from. This big list of themes here. That I think I mentioned HTML before. They're not HTML. They're from PySimpleGUI. In the original library, you have style for buttons, progress, yep, and everything. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. This is really cool stuff. It caught my eye the other day. I'm glad you're here so that I could talk about it out loud, because it's way quicker and easier for me to say all of that out loud than it would be to try to figure out how to word it all. So I'm glad you were here and able to see that. Where was I at though? We were in here. This didn't really work. Let me undo that. We were talking about vertical text. That's how we got on to talking about that. So vertical text, that's one of the PRs that I'm going to be looking at this weekend for sure. Possibly on the stream. What is it? 11:20. Maybe. We'll see where we're going. Okay. That's pretty good. The text is not great. The vertical text would be one way to alleviate that. The other way to alleviate that is possibly just making a BMP. I know that might be what JP leans toward. JP is good at making fancy graphics and stuff, and I think he mentioned the other day, you know, when it starts to look like the solution to a problem is math or programming or anything like that, you can probably also solve it with fancy graphics. What is this? I can't quite make that out in my little preview here. Let me check. Oh. Wait, what? Oh. Types of Linux. I see. I'm new to the Linux world. This one, I have Pop! OS Linux, which I think it's based on Ubuntu, but it does, to Scott's point about getting updates here in the chat, mine does get updates all the time. Pretty much every day I have updates. I don't know if they're major system updates or just applications or what, but it is updating stuff all the time. Good stuff about it. Yeah, I do have a good friend of mine that I used to work with used Arch Linux though and swears by it, just like Scott. They were in slow and stable. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to mess with the button? I think we can go a little bit wider. Let's just take the text off of it for now. Maybe I'll just do a plus for like plus to the next layer, or an arrow. What does an arrow look like? Let's try that. Not great either. Can make it a little wider, move it to the left a little bit further still, but it's not looking like my text is gonna really line up in the middle of my button. So honestly, just using a BMP might end up being the best solution to this, because then it can be made in Photoshop or whatever. A-Sprite, it can be made, it can look like exactly what we need, it can have any kind of font, up, down, left, right, and it won't have to wait on any of the library updates, because again, we're trying to get this ready to go by next week, so I don't know if all of those PRs will get in before next week. But solving this with an image won't require any changes, and it will let us make it as fancy or not fancy as we want. So I think I'm leaning that direction. So what I'll do is just take the text out of it for now. We'll make it a blank label, and we'll still tweak the size to fit though. So let's pull it. Do we want to go to the left just another hair? I think maybe just a couple pixels to make it look a little bit more centered between that other button and the side edge there. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Maybe we could make it taller so that it goes kind of in line with that icon. The problem with that though, all these sizes of everything is going to get all thrown off once we move to the other screen. So I also don't want to spend too very much time messing around with the intricate size of everything. Try this one. Triangle from Unicode or something like this. Let's try it. Copy that. Drop it in there. No, I don't. Well, so the problem actually, one problem is that terminalio.font probably doesn't have this character. If we loaded up something with bitmap font, maybe it might include this character. But I think the default one is fairly limited. I think it's mostly just like alphabet and numerical and then the basic symbols. Let me check on... I hope I have my Twitch paused so that it's not running an extra copy of the stream. I don't know... Does anybody know if you pause the video in Twitch, if the chat will still move? I'm hoping that I'm not just missing stuff in the Twitch chat because I have it paused. But I also already have a preview running in one place at least, and I don't need another thing streaming and running the video. Anyway, that's a pretty good size, I think. Let's hook it up so that when it gets pressed, it will do something, which is increase the current layer and re-render the stuff. So if there was a touch point, if we have waited long enough for the cooldown, I'll just make a new branch. We don't need to mess with inside this loop. This loop is looking at all the icons. We were kind of going separate from that. So if our button, which I'm going to call next layer button, if this button contains the touch point, P, if it contains the touch point, then current layer plus plus. No, you can't do that in Python, can you? I don't think so. Plus equals 1. We need to call load layer again. We still need to probably deal with that removing things problem that I mentioned earlier. The other thing is we need to cap this because we have only a certain number of layers and we don't want this to go above that number, otherwise we'll get index out of bounds. So if it's now bigger than the length of layers, then set it back to 0. If current layer is greater than or equal to the length of the layers list. Then set it back to 0. After we've done that, then we can load it. So let's just think this through. It's going to start on 1. We press the button. No. It's going to start on 0. We press the button. We go up to 1. 1 is not greater than or equal to 2. So we don't go to here. We do load layer. Next time around, we press it again. We go up to 2. 2 is greater than or equal to 2. So we go back to here, which puts us back to to 0. This puts us back to 0, which is the first layer, and then we call load layer. Yeah, I think that logic is right. So load layer. Let's remove some stuff here. Do we want to just remove everything and then re-add? Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest. We could even just move this down into here, append it right after we set it. So we just need code right here that's like remove everything from self. How do we do that? Is there a special helper for that? Empty maybe? Group.empty? I don't know if that exists. Most of these sorts of things are installable through AUR, which is package thing that's like Arch user repository maybe? That's like not the official one, but community one. I know a little bit about Arch, not very much. This is not really the page I want. I want the docs. Read the docs. Now I want the newest one. So we have pop and we have remove and we have del. We don't have an empty. So we just need to use a loop, I think. While length of self is greater than 0, self.pop remove the ith item. So by default it does -1, which is probably the last item, the highest index. Doesn't really matter what order we go in. Yeah, doesn't matter what order we go in. We are going to need to add the button though back, because that will remove the button. You know what? Do we want to do it this way? Oh, but this is not, there's no self. This is layout. Well. Yeah. This is layout. We don't need to remove this. I'm going to put that back. We just need to remove, we need to put icons back to an empty list. That's one thing we definitely need to do. Icons is an empty list. Pressed is also going to be a new empty list. Maybe. Do we need that? Maybe we don't need that one. pop. We don't want to pop from self. We want to pop from layout. Layout. Does grid layout have a remove? Can't remember. It has add content. I don't remember if it has a remove. Oh man, this does this sometimes. There we go. So actually, we have a bit of a problem because we are extending group, so we can use that layout.pop to pop all those things out of our group, but the problem is that we still have this cell content list, which is, we don't have any public way to reset that back to empty. And we need it to go back to empty because we're going to be adding all that new stuff. So we probably need to make a new, we probably want to make a new public function that's like empty or reset or something like that, that will do all of this stuff for us. Actually, it will do both of these things. It will pop all the items out of the group, and it will reset this thing back to empty. For now, though, I am going to see if it works by just using the private property. Oh, I got the previews mixed up again. There we go. Okay. So cell content list is empty, icons is empty. Loop over all the things in the group, pop each one. So we should have an empty layout group, we should have an empty cell content list, we should have an empty icons list. Then we're looping over all these things again, creating new icon widgets. Adding all them new widgets to the layout, setting the layer name. Yeah, that seems good to me on the surface. Certainly wasteful because we're just making new icon widgets every time. I don't know if that's going to cause a problem for us with memory, or if the way that we pop them and set them to blank here, if that's enough, maybe they'll get garbage collected. But that might be something to look at, is over time, if we fill up memory and then crash, we could maybe try to reuse icon widgets, or we could maybe try to set them to none or explicitly destroy them somehow so they can get garbage collected. For now, though, let's give it a try. I think that's pretty much all we need. So if the next layer button gets touched, increase the layer, set it back to 0 if that was the last layer, otherwise called load layer, which is what we just changed here, which does all that stuff, resetting and adding those things. That seems good to me. So I'm going to run this. We'll see if it crashes. It did not crash, so we're going to go ahead and test it. But before I do that, I'm actually going to take just a quick break and come right back. So I'm going to switch to the waiting thing, and then I'll come back and test this. Let's do that. And All right, and we're back. Got some fresh water. Got to stand up and stretch for a minute. Okay. Let's see, what do we share in the screen? That looks pretty cool on the chat here. What is this? Shuffles the display every 10 seconds. Nice. These are some kind of quotes, it looks like, probably. Silly toes. Shuffles the display every 10 seconds. That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing, Dexter. That's a neat looking thing. I like the what's that screen? Did you design that that screen board? It looks like a purple Osh Park. Here, let me pull this onto the main screen for a bigger look here. Looks like a purple Osh Park board there. Oh, and it's got a stemma. I didn't even see that. That's neat. What screen is that? I might be interested in using something like that. Is it color too, or is it black and white? That's a really nice looking little screen there. I like the way it connects with stemma. That'd be super helpful. Zio OLED. Nice. Thank you. I'll have to look into that. Okay. It's black and white. Okay. That's nice looking though. I like that square screen set. It'd be good for like a watch or any kind of just little display on top of on the project, whatever little project you got. Okay. And I like the way the mount holes are built in to the PCB there. Anyway, here we go. So we have our button, moment of truth. Let's see if it works. Thank you for the link there. Appreciate that. Let me open that. Let me pull that up over here actually. It's from SparkFun. Okay. Okay. So, and then theirs are called Quick instead of Semi, I think. But it's the same. I think it's the same connector. Neat. I2C, a little display. Yeah, 1.5 inch, 128 by 128. Very cool. All right, let's go back to here. That preview. Alrighty. What's the microcontroller do you have that runs it? Is that Dexter, right? Yeah. So we put our button in. We're gonna test it out. Let's get the camera. And so, yeah, it should just change layers when I click on the little green button down there, I think, right? There we go. And that actually works pretty good. So test second layer came up, my TEST, all of those things came up. One thing we should do is make sure those icons are working in, the program. So let's make sure that these actually say, hey, come on, buddy, get out of there. Cat's trying to use this opportunity to get into the fireplace. So let's make sure these work. Not looking great. Let's make sure we're focused here. Yeah, not good. So let's check out the code. So it did render okay, but the click events don't seem to be working. Let's see if we can cycle back around. So let's hit this again. There we go. We got back to the first layer. That's good. Do these work in here? No. Okay. So these don't work on any layer. Let me restart and see if it works the first time it loads. No. Okay, so we broke the touches altogether. Let's take a look here. So we create all those things, we add them to icon, get the touch point. if it's been long enough for the cooldown, does this need to set last press time? If it's been long enough for the cooldown, if we touched the next layer button, do this stuff, which is working, for index and icon shortcut inside of enumerate icons, which we are building the list of icons right here. We did set it back to empty, but we are filling it back up here. Oh. Am I having scope problems? Does this actually have stuff in it when it's here? I think maybe I need to use global or something. This is going to print really fast, but whatever. That's another thing I need to fix. Inside a grid layout, we have a debug print statement. Oh, I'm not touching anything. Yeah. So this is always an empty list. The reason this is an empty list is because of scope. I'm setting, so like I have here icons, underscore icons is an empty list. Here we try, what I'm trying to do is set this same variable underscore icons back to an empty list. What's actually happening though is because this is inside of a function, this is becoming a new variable with its own scope inside the function. So it's local to the function. It's not affecting that outer variable. So this is creating a new variable, happens to have the same name, but it's only inside the scope. Starting out as empty, it's getting all these things appended to it, and then as soon as we get to here, as soon as this function ends, it just goes away. It's basically ready for garbage collection, I think, right? So this needs to be global icons. Because we want to reference the other one and then set it back to empty and then be adding stuff to it. Let's try it that way. Unexpected makers feather S2. Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice feather. Played with that one for a little bit. I love the space is one thing I'll say. It's like 16 megs or something. You got like 12 megs of usable space. It's really nice to have that much room. Okay, let's try this. Do we want to press? So if these work, let's just make it so we're not typing all over our code if it does happen to work. This is one of the downsides of testing keyboard stuff, right? Like, you'll mess up your code if things go crazy. So for one thing is the rewind is the left arrow, which we don't have anything, it wouldn't do anything. So there's a K, that's working. Those are good. Left arrow, right arrow, Control N, volume buttons are good. Test, T, E, S, T, smiley face. Whoops. Got an extra S there. Did I actually get an extra S or was that a bug? I didn't feel like I was touching S, but maybe I didn't really look either, so maybe I did get it. That's all good. Let's change layers. Change layers. Okay. T, E, S, T, smiley face, all good there. So second layer is working now. Let's go back well, let's go next layer again, which is going to bring us this time back to the first layer, but that's only because we have two. So again, let's just real quick test a couple of these. Volume T S T smiley face. That's looking all good. So I think we're good there. Let me copy this into the repo. Copy here to code. And layers. This happens to me sometimes when I copy out of here. I think if you leave the whole thing highlighted and then click away, it gets deleted. Okay, got our config with the second layer. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and make a commit right here since this is working, but then we will add that home layer button that Hugo suggested earlier. But this way we'll have a clean commit with a working thing. If we ever need to refer back to it, we can. Don't need that extra space. Don't need that extra space. Can keep that padding change. More white space. New button. More white space. Check the new button. Fix the keyboard release. That looks good. This should just be adding the second layer. Oh, and removing the imports. White space. Oh, actually, I had not added the TEST keys when I committed last time, so those got added now. And then, oh no, I did add them, but it just, yeah, the get difference is making it look weird. So these did exist in the first layer, but now we added the second layer, and the second layer has these. We don't need this. Okay. Layer config file. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the home button as well. I think that's a really nice idea. That one I'm going to put in the top right corner. So it'll be kind of like opposite. This one's in the bottom right, and the new one, the home one, will be up in the top right up there. So let's do that. Again, I will just start working in Mu, and then when I'm ready, I'll copy it back to the repo and commit from there. So we can go find our button. Ooh, got deleted. Maybe we'll put this after we append it. Let's do here. Home layer button. X is the same, Y is different. This will be 0. Width and height are the same. Style is the same. Color, let's do a new color. I'm gonna go orangish. I don't know, maybe this will turn out orangish. Same thing there, no text. Font's fine. Color doesn't matter. Can you leave all these off? I don't know, eventually we're gonna have a bitmap, I guess. Just leave them for now. Home layer button, so let's append that to main group. And let's run it and see if it shows up. It did, and that is orangish, so that's looking good. Let's take out that print statement that I added a moment ago. Icons. So now we can do this, make a click listener for home layer. There we go. Current layer does not plus anything, but instead just go hardcode to 0. We never can be out of bounds. Yeah, load the current layer, then save the last press time. Seems good. One thing is we'll need a third layer to really be able to tell if it's actually working. Maybe. I mean, I guess we could tell if it's working without, but we need the third layer to know if it's actually like working for its intended purpose, making it easier to get back. So I'll make a third layer. I do want to have some different stuff in the third layer. Third. We'll just leave it at that. We'll do the smiley face in, actually. Make an L too. Okay, so we have a third layer. We have code that takes us back to the 0 layer. We have invalid syntax 183, no, 103? 103 layers. Ah, 2 commas. Okay. Okay, drew. So next layer to go to layer index 1, second one in the list. Just double check that this is still working. Yep. So let's go forward first. So layer 3 RDL, yep. Smiley face button, L, yep. So forward again will get us back to the first layer, which it does. First layer still works, first layer. So let's go forward again. Here now we can finally see this one in action. So we're gonna go home. Nice, and that did take us back to the 0 index, or what we are referring to now as the home layer. So that worked correctly. So let's go ahead, commit this. Okay. Call this episode of the stream Ready Layer 1. Nice. I like it. So let's make a commit. I don't think that much changed really. I guess it's putting these back for me, these empty lines, so I'll let them stay for now. Home layer button, yep, makes sense. And new click listener if statement also makes sense. And we took out our print icons, perfect. And then layer, we added the third layer. And also we got white space. Perfect. Adding third test, well, layer to test config. Adding home layer button. Missed the last little bit since I was making lunch for the kiddos. This is looking really slick. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I am sure on this upcoming week, I'm sure JP will be talking about it. He's doing the 3D printing for it, but he might be talking about the code too. So if you tune in there, you might have another chance to catch similar type of stuff. I would guess he might not dive quite as deep into the code, but he might go over it either on JP's workshop next week or maybe during show and tell or something real quick. So we added the third layer to the test config. We added the home layer button. Yeah, that's good. Push. So I think the other thing I want to do is go ahead and start. I want to do that. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to go ahead and move this icon widget into display.io layout. So we'll make a PR for that and we'll move that over to there. And if we can get it merged in time, then we'll just do it that way. And this touch deck project will just import it from there. We're already using grid layouts. We already have to have the layout library as a requirement anyway. So if we move this icon widget into there, then other folks can reuse it for different things. And it won't take up any room in this project, which is nice. I think more so it's nice that it's nice and reusable, right? Like there's nothing specific to Stream Deck or Touch Deck that's inside this widget, so it can definitely get reused for other things. It can definitely get enhanced as well. Like, you know, right now the font is just hard-coded to built-in. Right now the position is hard-coded to the bottom center. You know, maybe eventually after this is moved into that library, it could get enhancements like allow you to put the label in a different spot, or allow you to use a different font or a different color, or maybe it allows you to have a background or something. I don't know. We can kind of build on top of this, but I think it makes the most sense for it to be inside display.io layout instead of in this project. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll probably wrap up the stream after that. I probably won't do any of the display text stuff on stream, but I am going to be getting to that stuff this week. And we talked about the style one. That was the main one I wanted to make sure I had a chance to talk about with Jose if he's here. So glad I got a chance to do that. But I'll be reviewing the rest of those PRs that are in this weekend and trying to get some of them merged. Especially the baseline anchor one, the new text one, new font, I mean, a couple of the other ones. I will say the main thing I want to do is just make sure that after we MPY freeze or compile or whatever, after we MPY compile the libraries, that it still works with those new type hints that you added, Jose. You added those type hints. Those are super cool because they make it so that IDE, like PyCharm, knows what everything is. The only thing I don't know for sure is the CircuitPython support. If it runs fine on the microcontroller and if it runs fine after MPY, then I think we're good to go there. But I just want to double check on that. So that'll be one of the things I am doing this weekend, but not necessarily on stream. So let's see. We need to make. Well, first we need to make sure that we're all the way updated. So let's go git fetch Adafruit, and let's make a new branch to work on. So git checkout b. The name of the new branch is icon widget. Adding icon widget. We are tracking Adafruit main, and we are not no track. Is it no track or no tracking? I'm second guessing myself now. I think it's just no track. Git checkout no track. Yes, no track. And let me just make sure, let me just make sure main is the right branch. No, that was it. Display layout. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Okay. So now we made a new branch. This thing will change. Our new branch is started from Adafruit main, but it's not tracking Adafruit main. So when I go to push, it's not going to push to Adafruit main. It's going to push to my repo, which is, it's called origin. I need to run that reload, that rename code that Hugo was nice enough to share with me one week. I need to do that rename. I've done it in a few repos, but not across the board. But it's going to push to origin and then this new branch, which means it will push to foamyguy, which is exactly what we want. So we're making a new widget. We'll go inside widgets. We will say new file icon widget. If anybody has an idea for a better name for this thing, definitely let me know. I'm not sure if icon widget is the best name, but it is what I started with. So icon widget. Let me check up on the chat here. Just thinking through things. Adding that to the library won't be a big impact on size, since the devices it would get used on would have more memory. Unfortunately, I'm not sure when you mentioned that, Hugo. I'm not sure which thing I was talking about at the time. Sorry. Should have kept on top of that better. Otherwise, if the library gets too sizable for device memory, I guess the non-base widget could be in their own library. Oh, I think it's because I was talking about moving icon widget into display.io layout. Maybe that's what it was referring to. And I do partially it's for size, but also partially it's just so that it's reusable, right? Like other folks can find use for this icon widget, I'm sure. Talking about adding the class. Okay, yeah, display.io layout. Okay, agree. It's kind of a test for type annotations, and if it works, then extend it to other libraries. Yeah, I'm excited to have that stuff built in. I mean, as a heavy PyCharm user, I really love control click is the one that I use a lot. Like you can control click to go inside of another object. I use that all the time, so I'm super stoked to have that stuff all hooked up into PyCharm and have the type hints, so that also when you hover on a function, it will give that little pop-up that tells you what types. That stuff is super helpful. Okay, icon widget, we can copy this in. I will, gosh darn it. I will also make a header for this, the copyright and all the stuff we need, and some doc strings. So I'm gonna cut this from here. Okay, I'm gonna do it this way. Wow. What? Okay, so we need widget and control actually no longer in here, but instead over here. So a bunch of this stuff is also not used here, like, well, image load is inside of the icon widget, so that makes sense. Touchscreen we are using here. Group. We're making main group, but we're importing display IO, so we're not actually needing group by itself. Guess technically we don't need to import these because our config object, that layer config object, imports it for themselves in there. Okay. So we cleaned up some imports. We need display text in here. I'm just going to use bitmap label because it uses less memory. I think I just defaulted to label when I first wrote this because I was, or honestly, you know what it is I started from a simple test in one of the repos. I think I started with the grid layout simple test. Okay, this says display tile grid. You know what would be nice, I think, is instead of importing all of display IO, let's just import the thing we need. Terminal IO. It's looking good. So we would still need to import it. Or, well, not still, but now we would need to import it. So layout, widgets, icon widget, icon widget. Okay, let's test and see if this is working. So we need to go to this directory. We need to get the library. Go to the device, lib. I'll delete the old one. Can see that it crashes now because it doesn't have display IO layout. Perfect. Paste the new one. Don't got enough space. So we will go back to root and delete this. Wait for that to finish. Okay. Back to lib. Paste. Nope. Oh, yep. Okay, yep. It just it restarted twice. So it started loading. It loaded the buttons the first time, and then it restarted itself. Something on my computer wrote to the drive or did something that made it restart again, and it just wasn't done drawing the icons yet. So that's what it did there. But that's still working. Let's just make sure these actually function. Okay. Okay. Left, right, capital N, looking good. Volume is good. Okay, I definitely just gotta E from the T. And then I also just got an N, also from the T. So we might have something funky going on with the touch logic, or the other thing is like my PyPortal, unfortunately, my PyPortal has it's been through a couple battles with falling off the desk, honestly. And the screen has gotten all flopped off and it's not stuck down very well. I would not be super surprised if my touchscreen was damaged a little bit, and so maybe it's got some kind of phantom clicks. One thing is I'll test this out a bunch, you know, obviously on the Featherwing once that arrives, and if everything is okay there, then I probably won't worry too much about these phantom clicks. I think the code is all good the way that it's set up here. If it's not, then the part of the code that we'll be looking into, if there is a bug, then the bug is going to be something to do with this. So if I'm still seeing weirdness once I get the Featherwing, then I'll come back and take a real hard close look at this section, see if there's anything I've done wrong. But if everything's working fine on the Featherwing, then truthfully my guess is that my PyPortal has taken one too many tumbles off the desk. Yeah. It's a trooper, honestly. There's once or twice where I've been like really pretty surprised that it's still powered on and worked fine afterwards. I've been meaning to print the case. I haven't printed a case. That's on me. That's my bad. I should have. I know there's some acrylic ones that are laser cut. There's some you can 3D print. I really should have done that a long time ago. K-Match, I don't know if K-Match is watching still. If so, well, either way, K-Match made a really cool PyPortal case that like puts it up on the, you can set it on your laptop. It's like a little connector that, you know, you can connect it up to the screen kind of thing. That thing is pretty cool. I should have any one of a number of different cases that are out there, so it's definitely on me. But I'm going to hope that that's the case. I'm going to hope that mine is just a little wonky and that the code is correct. But if not, then we'll come back and debug it. Just talking about, yeah, sorry. I caught up on that. Okay. So this is working. Let's just get this in PR shape, and then once that's good, I'll push it and I'll make a PR for it, and then we'll probably wrap the stream up there for today. So what all do we need? We need the top. I'll base this off a switch round. So we need the copyright blob, and we need the doc strings sort of default stuff here. So let's just work on fixing up some of this. This is icon widget. Icon image with a text label centered below it. I'm going to say with a small text label. Tim. Implementation notes, hardware, software. That's all fine. So this is like sort of high level what it is. We don't have too much in the way of features. I guess contains is a feature. Anchored positioning we're getting from Widget. That's also a feature. Do we want to include a section like this? I think for now I'm going to leave out this section. There's not too much to add beyond this. We could maybe list a couple of those things, but for now I think I'm going to leave it, just keep it fairly bare bones. Don't forget my doc strings. Yep, got to do my doc strings. Yep, for Sphinx. So this one here, I might look into different. This one has a bunch of really nice documentation stuff. I will not be going probably into as deep a detail, at least right away, because again, we've got to get this. If we're gonna have it in the layout library here, we're gonna have to get it merged like within the next day or two. The other thing is, like, there's not the switch. There's a lot of details about the way it works because it has the different states of like left and right and moving, and it has animations and stuff. I would like to try to look at an animation embellishment for this, but I'm gonna have to hold off until I get the Featherwing screen and then make sure on that screen that it looks good. Since that's the one we're targeting, we want to make sure that it's gonna look good on that one. So it will add a little bit to it once it comes time to do that. But for now, it's a fairly bare bones widget. I won't have quite as many details and features and things. And because of that, my docs section will be smaller. So I think it will be good. Maybe let's take a look at this one. Yeah, I think this is the kind of one we want. So that switch around one, that's amazing. There's all kinds of really nice details in there. And those all come through to the docs page. So if you're looking at read the docs, you can see all of that stuff. And all that stuff is really great. But I do not necessarily have as much time to get all of that in. Oh, 1 second. I was playing with a coat. Okay. So yes, let's change this. Okay. So arguments. We are extending widget and control. Widget does take X and Y and width and height. So location, the icon widget should be placed. Pixel coordinates, that's true. Hey, leave my feet alone. Icon widget, got 2 spaces. The width. So technically we're extending widget and widget has width. So you can pass the height and width. Not sure that it will do anything with it though, truthfully, because the way it's loading this image here and just sticking it into a tile grid, it's not doing any scaling or anything. So if you specified a width that was smaller than the size of your image, the width property would be smaller, but the actual visual width of the thing on the screen would be bigger. Given more time, it would probably be good to either like override this further so that you don't have the option of passing height and width, or maybe implement some kind of scaling where if you set a smaller size, then your image gets scaled down to fit. I know there's some new stuff in the bitmap tools modules that KMatch is working on that allow us, I'm pretty sure there's one that allows us to scale by a float like multiplier so we could scale by like, you know, 0.9 or whatever, that would be something we could utilize for that scaling. For now though, I think what I'm gonna do is just call it the width and height, and really the only thing it affects right now, I believe, is the touch. Well, no, actually it does not even affect the touch, because the touch is based on the image. Are we even giving it a width? I think we're not. Icon widget. Yeah, we're just passing the text and the image file. Okay, so I'm going to take these two out. They don't do anything. You can pass them because we extend widget, but they don't do anything. So we don't need to list them. We don't need them in the documentation. Unless or until we ever actually go back and make them do something. Next up we have... We don't have a grid size. We don't have a cell padding. We do have a max size because we are extending widget, which is extending group. And when we talked about this before, it's gonna not be a requirement anymore very soon, but for now we do want to keep it because we don't have a release. I think Scott mentioned we want to get at least maybe 2 releases down the road also, so it'll be a minute before we go back and remove the max size stuff. So we'll put it there for now. What else do we have? I think, is that it? I mean, we have the rest of these things. I guess anchor point and anchor position. And these behave the same. Oh, here's another way to do the type, but this I guess is only for Sphinx, probably not for IDEs. Values from yes. Pixel value for the location of the anchor point. Tuple int, yep. That looks good. Is that it? There's no other keyword arguments that you need to pass, or even that you can pass that do anything useful. Let's put it that way. I guess you could technically pass scale. Scale documented in this one? It's not. I think I'm gonna take my cue from here and not really document scale. I would not recommend using scale because your bitmap is gonna get pixelated that's in the icon, so I don't think that's what we want. So I think I'm gonna leave scale out. The other two though that I definitely do need to do are the 2 positional arguments, which are the text and the image. Param, this one is a string. I think I called it label. Label text. That's better actually. The text that will be shown beneath icon. And then icon itself. So label, this one is icon. This is also a string, and it's the file path of the EMP image can be used. Okay, so label text, icon, those two are positional. Those two are positional. Am I supposed to put something specifically here that specifies positional instead of keyword? Does anybody know? Otherwise, we're looking good. We could go back and add optionals on some of these, I guess, if we wanted, but I think because they're keyword arguments, that's kind of implied. Label text, icons, yeah. I think we're looking good here. So next thing is we can put a docstring for this. Let's look at control. This one we're overriding from control. Let's see what this says. Checks if it was touched, returns true if touch point. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be the same stuff. You know, K-Match, if you're still here or if you ever watched this at a different time, if not, I wonder if it would make sense if we gave control an XY and then we had this logic subtracting the XY here actually inside a control so that the subclasses don't have to do it. I don't know, there might be, that's like just came right off the top of my head, there might be a reason why that can't work or why it's not ideal. But that might be kind of neat if we could do it. That way subclasses could just subclass control and it would automatically update for the X and Y. It gets weird though because X and Y are properties of group which are coming from widget, not control. So if those had an X and Y also, would that get messed up? It very well might. So maybe that can't work. Yes, checks if the icon widget was touched, returns true if touch point is within the icon widget's touch boundary. Okay. This is looking good. Let's give it a once over. Copyright is correct. It's set to me. Author is correct. It's set to me. We have top level docs. I want to talk about it's clickable. Maybe I'll just add that it's clickable. Or let's call it touch enabled widget. Widget that holds an icon. Do the same thing here. It is optional, like you could still use this without touch, although if you don't have touch, like your user might think it's an icon that they're supposed to touch, so maybe if you're using cursor class or something, could still use it. But touch enabled widget holds an image, holds an icon image loaded with Adafruit image load and a text label centered beneath it. And I did use bitmap label, right? Yep. Do I have bitmap label in the... Uh-oh. Got a Discord ping. Did my thing freeze? No. Oh, hey, Johnny. How's it going? Good morning or afternoon or whatever. Just past in the afternoon for me. I don't know where you're at, but happy to have you here. We'll be wrapping up before too long, though. Basically getting this PR squared away, and then once that's done, I'll be wrapping it up for the day. Where's I at? This code, yeah, I was checking to make sure this is used as bitmap label, not label. We are importing both. This is still an old copy because it was using label here. Okay, that's looking good to me. So this is our icon widget. So we will copy. Well, let's run our pre-commit. That way, black will run and Pylint. So black got tripped. No. Yes, black got tripped on my new file. So that would have ran and get reformatted. Missing copyright. I got this extra thing in my repo here. I can just delete that. Use the ESP32 board called 32 Touchdown with the free TouchDeck software. Trying to convince the guy who made it to make an ESP32 S2 version so we can run CircuitPython. Yeah, that'd be awesome. This time's it's 19, so it's evening. Good evening then. I'm happy to have you joining us. Okay, so I deleted that. So black would have ran. Let's just run pre-commit again and see what we fail for this time. So we got all the way through black. Pylint. We have a couple Pylint things. Third-party import image load should be before control. So let's rearrange the imports. Image load. Also, it's, I'm sure, just going to complain about this one next. Let's put both of those first. Okay, what's the other one? Same thing, actually. Yeah, that was the second one. Okay, so it did complain about them both. So we fixed those. Let's run this again. Might be good. Fingers crossed. Pylint. Yep, made it through library. I didn't touch the examples, so hopefully we pass examples too. So it failed, but it only failed because I have two files that are not checked in. Somebody, I think it was Dan H. and somebody else, Anecdata, maybe, I don't remember for sure who. Somebody showed me a way to do this. You can do like pre-commit run, and then instead of all files, you do like, I don't remember the syntax. You do like files and then a pipe, and then you can put like git ls or something. You can put something here, and then it will find all the files and pass them into pre-commit, and it ignores the ones that aren't checked in. So I need to commit that to memory and start using that instead of run all files. It's the moral of the story. But unfortunately, I don't know it yet. So run all files is what we got. And that is causing it to fail because of these extra files, which are not actually part of the repo. So we don't care if they fail. Stream Deck, I can just delete that because this is basically the first version of this code when I first wrote it. We don't need it anymore because now I have it in a repo and I have made a bunch of new versions since then. So we can just delete that one. This one I'm going to keep because I use it for testing stuff from time to time. So we'll run this one more time. Ooh. Weird. My pre-commit, my history is different now. Let's run that again just to make sure that the only thing we fail for is that one file, which is not actually checked in. We will build Sphinx. We'll check out the pages. We'll make sure that looks good. And then as long as that builds and looks good, I think we're ready to push this and make the PR. Yeah, this failed for that one. Failed. How did it fail twice for that one? Oh, I think I'm just scrolling back up to the previous runs. Okay, yeah, that's the only one it failed for, so we should be good to go. Let's build the docs. I don't know the command off the top of my head. It has a bunch of flags. I think we can find it here, though. Sphinx. Yeah. Okay, we don't want to move it. Go to docs. Oh, I'm already in docs. It says right here. So run this. Okay, that built successfully. Let's just go peek at it in the browser, make sure my new stuff is there. It's this file here. And I will put this in Firefox. Gosh darn it, come on. There we go. Check the chat while that's loading. Running just pre-commit will run on the staged contents. So don't put run and just do pre-commit by itself. No, I still ended up though. I still ended up with it failing for this file that's not checked in. I don't, maybe I will be the first to admit my Git knowledge is somewhat lacking. I'm not 100% sure what staged means technically. But this file is red. It means that it's not checked into the repo, so like it won't get pushed when I push. Not sure if that means unstaged or not, but I do notice it does still get flagged when I run pre-commit that way. If you did git add, then it is staged. But then running pre-commit must be running on files that are not staged, because I ran that one just by itself there pre-commit, and it's definitely not staged because I have not done git add on it, which is what the red inside PyCharm indicates. I don't know if there's a way in the terminal to verify that, like git ls or something maybe, but as far as I understand it, this one then would be not staged, but this is still checking it. Let me get those docs back up too. So this is the docs. Examples. Okay, so one problem is it's not listed here in the API reference section. So we need to figure that part out. Why is that not listed? Do we need to add something to one of these files? This one? Yeah, looks like it. So I think I'll put this below, switch around. This is widgets, icon widget, by source. I don't know what that does. We'll probably just keep it the same. Let's make an empty line at the end. Okay, let's run that build again. And refresh this page. There we go. Now we got icon widget. If we click on that, there's our icon widget. Looking good. Here is our doc strings for the constructor. Icon widget takes two parameters, label text and icon, plus all the kwargs. Label text icon, XY, anchor point, anchor position, max size. This is looking good to me. Oh. Did I copy that in? Somehow we got the text from group. No. This must be some of the stuff that Kmatch has figured out for us. The way... Well, this has inherited members, and that's inheritance diagram. By source. Members. Sphinx has a flag to import the module docs. I'm not sure what you mean, Jose. If it has Kmatch imports the inheritance. Is it from this members thing here? Let me look at display text. No, this does members. The by source, though, maybe by source is maybe that's causing it to include the group thing. I'm kind of curious. I'll go back, put this back, but no, that's still there. Line 22, inherited members. So does that, let me put that back. So then does this affect the whole, this affects this whole file by having inherited members here, even though it's like inside of this heading, at least that's what it looks like to me. Even so it's inside of that, it still also affects my new one down here, icon widget. This one has private members. Or maybe it is actually here. Is there something in here? No. I do not know. Well, let me try it that way. Let me just need a Sphinx tutorial. Yeah, I agree. I need a Sphinx tutorial myself. Maybe one of these days we'll just we'll tinker with Sphinx like all stream or something. That might be kind of fun. Let's try it like this. Let's take this out and let's see what it does. No, it still has that group thing there. That's weird. Yeah, it's not bad. I don't think we necessarily want to get rid of it. I am curious though what's causing it. And if there's a way, the other thing I'm kind of curious is if there's a way to move it to the top of all those parameters, because I feel like it kind of gets visually lost in the page here. Okay, so we definitely need members. Members, I took that out and now it doesn't have anything useful. So it's somehow coming along with members, and it's automatically getting that. So I'm not entirely sure how, but I think we can just leave it. It's not so bad. Really, the main thing, like I said, the main thing I want to do is move it to the top if we could, but that's not the end of the world. Okay, so these docs are looking pretty good to me. contains. One thing. Should this be? This shouldn't. I don't think this should be highlighted like this. This is definitely weird looking. Actually, let's try to figure that out. Yeah. Should be like this, with no box around it. Which part is making it do that? Triple quotes. There's nothing really special about those. These ones maybe aren't the best to look at because they don't have parameters. This does just end at the end of the last one. Try dropping the new line. Yep, okay. Let's do that way. I didn't. Let's actually. This is one of the traps of working on the docs. You make a change and then you go refresh without building. Let's do this. No, still there. It's so weird. The icon widgets. Where does it break? It breaks where I new lined. So should I not new line? They can be on the line below return. Put them there. Rerun the build. There we go. Contains touch point. Checks if the icon widget was touched. Returns true if the touch point is within the icon widget's touch boundary. Parameters touch point. XY location. Returns Boolean. Perfect. That is looking good. Okay. Let's just make sure pre-commit still passes. Why check YAML says no files also, which is weird to me. Don't we have YAML like pre-commit? Well, I guess that's part of pre-commit though. Project Toml. Anyway, we failed for that one. That's fine. Yeah, I think we are good here. So let's push this. And one thing that we can do is it should have all the action stuff in it, so it should run the actions on my branch. So we should be able to find out if it's actually passing before I make a PR. Okay, adding icon widget. So that is running the actions. It's going to take it a minute to go, and while that is running, I'm going to take one more quick break. We'll come back and see if that passes. If it does, I'll make the PR, and then we'll wrap it up after that. But I will be back in just a moment. All right. Let's go back to the stream. Oh, we did not. What did we mess up? Pre-commit. We failed Pyland on icon widget. But why did it pass locally? I mean, I can go and fix that line. That's no big deal, but why would it pass? Did I change it after I ran it the last time? Oh boy. What, it's gotten easier talking about WebLate a little bit. I haven't got any, not the official Spanish. I think, maybe Fede 2 might. I don't know for sure about official, but I do know that Fede 2 I think worked on a fair amount of the Spanish translation. Line 2 long, 124. Let's check out line 124. I don't even have a line 124. So one thing is we would want to probably have an example of this too, which we don't have right now. Line 78. It's 124 characters, not line 24. Line 78. I did change it. Well, so if we if we have a new line, the Sphinx formatting gets weird. If we don't have a new line, Pilot complains. That's not ideal. Does black? And black doesn't change it. What are we gonna do about this? Because that fixes Pilot. But breaks Sphinx. Maybe not. Now this looks okay. I have no idea what is different. Let me do Control-Shift-R. Okay. Let me just make absolutely super duper sure by deleting build. This page should not load. Thank you. Run this again. Now it does load. Icon widget. Contains, looks good. No extra box. Okay. Calling this one good. I have no idea how that's different than what we had before, or why that made Sphinx have a box around it before, or what I could have done to fix that. But maybe moving this thing changed it too? I don't know. Anyway, it's good now. Talking about translations, it looks like. Yeah. Okay. Just because I ran Sphinx last, let me just quadruple, triple check here one more time. Pre-commit. Got it. Okay. Let's push. All right, this one should pass. And while that's working, I will start working on a PR over here. I won't create it if it doesn't end up passing, but just so we're ready to go. Upcoming touch deck project. Okay, we're gonna link to here because this is the only code that uses this thing so far. Like I was saying, I think it would be good eventually to make make an example that uses this. Honestly, I might still do that today. We'll see if anybody says anything on the PR. It'd be good to have an example that uses it. Why did I come back to here? Oh, yeah. Sorry. So the problem is I went to the wrong place. We want touch deck. This one. Let me link to the file. Could link to the actual file. Well, but you need both. I should probably just make an example. Yeah, probably need to make an example. I'm gonna leave it like this for now though. New widget will be used in upcoming RP 2040 project. Current touch deck code. Might as well go ahead and put a picture of what it looks like. Okay. Let's get all the new code and just super one last safety sanity check thing here. We're gonna go back and find this code. And now that we've done all of our black and pylons and sphinxes and everything, we're just gonna take the latest copy of this, drop it right back on the PyPortal and make sure that it doesn't crash or anything crazy. So layout, delete, webcam. So we got no layout library, perfect. Paste in the current copy. There we go, running. Those are two buttons. It did the reload thing again. Okay, left, right, looking good. Volume, smiley face, next layer, E, T, smiley face, home layer, left, next layer, R, D. Okay, we are looking good to me. So let's just hit submit on this. Whichever window it's in, there it is. All right, that is in. Let me catch up on the chat real quick, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. So, talking about translations, Canadian English spelling. Gotta translate English to UK and US. Wonder who on the Visual Code Studio team, Visual Code team thought it was a good idea not to save the file when exiting the application. It doesn't save automatically? Yeah, that's rough. I don't use Visual Code, or I mean Visual Studio. But yeah, that's dangerous. All right. I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Anyone who checked this out live in the chat with us, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thank you to anyone who watched the video after the fact. If you're watching this as a replay, that's awesome too. Appreciate all of you tuning in. Definitely appreciate all those folks in the chat who helped me out during the stream with different stuff. And yeah, I will be back next week, same time. I don't know what we'll be working on, but I'm sure we'll figure it out between now and then. If you're interested in this touch deck project, go and check out JP's stream from yesterday or the day before. I think it's the day before, JP's workshop. He was working on this project as well, so you can get some more insight into the 3D design if you're interested in that. And I'm guessing also JP will be talking about it some on his shows coming up this week. So if you are interested, again, then also keep an eye out for those and check out those shows this week. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more. But with that, I will sign off for now. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good day and weekend.